Welcome to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to give you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Before we get started, I want to let you know about this episode's sponsor. Look, if there is one thing every guest on the show would agree on, it's that we all need to eat more greens, veggies, and fruit. But we get it. Look, choosing, shopping for, chopping, and prepping and cooking all of these ingredients is hard, and it can be time-consuming and expensive. And that's why I'm so excited about Ambro Greens, the latest product from a company I have been using for a long time, Ambronite. Ambro Greens is the easiest, tastiest way to enjoy your daily greens, veggies, and berries, gives you increased energy, helps control cravings and curb hunger, and strengthens gut health and immunity. Now, I have partnered with Ambronite to give you an absolutely insane deal. They want you to try this product for 5 days because they know that you will absolutely love it and become a lifelong user. And so if you visit ambronite.com/superhuman, you can get a 5-day pack of Ambro Greens for just $9.90. That's AMBRONITE.com/superhuman. Greetings, SuperFriends, and welcome to this week's episode, which was lovingly handcrafted thanks to a review from Brooke Craven from the United States of America, who says, "Awesome podcast, 5 stars. Jonathan, host of the Superhuman Academy podcast, aims to motivate, inspire, and more in this can't-miss podcast. The host and expert guests offer insightful advice and information that is helpful to anyone that listens." Well, thank you so much, Brooke. I really appreciate the review. The entire team did a little happiness jig thanks to you. On to today's episode. Ladies and gents, today we are joined by Chris Albert. He's a trainer, nutrition coach, and podcaster, and his show, the Warrior Soul Podcast, empowers U.S. military veterans to live their best lives through tools, tactics, ideas, and strategies that he and his amazing guests provide. Chris is a former Marine Corps veteran, and he is working or was working on his Ph.D. in political science at UC Santa Barbara when he got interested in nutrition. He went on to found a world-famous gym, has had some crazy experiences around discovering his identity and his genetics, around growing up without adult figures in his life, and much, much more, which I'm going to let him tell you all about in this episode. Now, my goal for the episode was really to get into the mind of a real life warrior and figure out what we can learn about adapting a warrior mindset in our own lives. How can we embody more discipline? How can we reach our goals by staying true to that discipline? And what kind of things could we learn from someone who literally is a warrior and works every single day with warriors to add a little more superhuman to our own lives? I really enjoyed the episode, which is a pretty good indication that you are going to enjoy it as well. So, without any further ado, Chris Albert. Mr. Chris Albert, how are you, my friend?
Dude, I'm doing absolutely outstanding, and I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Well, likewise, and I'm really excited, and this is the beginning of an awesome relationship because I'm really excited to come on to your show, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the Warrior Soul Podcast. So I'm really stoked about that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Warrior Soul Podcast. Really excited to have you on. We've had a lot of great guests, and I have to say it's a real honor for me to be here considering the quality of people that you bring to the Superhuman Academy every week.
Oh, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man. So I covered your bio a little bit in the intro, but it never does justice. So I would love to hear first, who you are, what you do, but the interesting part for me is how you got to doing what you do.
Absolutely. So again, my name's Chris Albert. I'm the host and founder of the Warrior Soul Podcast. And what we do over at the Warrior Soul Podcast is we empower U.S. military veterans and anybody else who's willing to listen to live their best lives. And we do that by delivering tools, tactics, ideas, and strategies that help veterans to show up as the best versions of themselves in the civilian world. And the way I got into this, well, Started back when I was 19 years old. I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. I grew up without a father. My mom raised both me and my sister. And, I pretty much existed without a male presence in my life throughout my youth. I had a grandfather and he died when I was around 9 years old. And so really was kind of lost throughout my early teenage years and things like that. And my mom did her best. She tried to get me into organized sports, but I really needed something to help me to get that kind of initiation into being a man. And so I decided to enlist in the Marine Corps at 19, went in and then deployed to Iraq in 2003. And afterwards, I got out and was kind of aimless for a while. I went off and I got an education, did my bachelor's, did a master's degree. I went up to UC Santa Barbara and worked on a doctorate in political science. I studied game theory and quantitative methodology along with international politics. Wow. But along the way, I figured out that I didn't really want to be an academic. So I rather than writing articles that about 10 people would ever read, I decided to get into the fitness industry. And so I put a lot of the research techniques that I learned into studying nutrition. I opened up a gym called Metroflex Gym in Long Beach, went through a rough period of time as a new entrepreneur at that, didn't have a lot of the skills necessary to do it, but the gym took off. But I wasn't skilled enough to be at the helm of that gym. So I ended up losing my shares. I got married in the process and then got divorced, was living out of my car for a while, and then had to figure something out. So I got into online training. And so I basically pulled myself back up onto my feet, started an online training business, started talking over YouTube, and slowly built myself up, got myself into a rented room, and then finally earned enough money to get an apartment. And then at that point, I started getting a lot more money coming in. And I was taking a look at my life and, being in the fitness industry, the portion of the fitness industry I was in, I was coaching a lot of high-level bodybuilders. I was a nutrition advisor to guys like CT Fletcher, Mike Rashid, a lot of different IFBB pros, MMA athletes. But my main clientele, I was a little bit disturbed because I felt myself just kind of catering to people's vanity. And I was looking for something with a bit more meaning. And I was looking at what was going on out there in the veteran community. And, having dealt with my own issues, having dealt with alcoholism, having dealt with depression, having dealt with, pretty much being homeless at one point, I wanted to do something because the suicide rate, the homeless rate was skyrocketing. And all I saw out there was a lot of entertainment and a lot of people raising awareness about veterans issues, talking about the suicide rate, talking about the homeless issue, but not bringing any viable solutions. So I decided I was going to create a platform that was going to bring better ideas to the veteran community. And so I went through a process of first apprenticeship. I went and I befriended Brian Rose of London Reel.
Oh,
he
cool.
brought me in. Yeah. He brought me in as the lead instructor of the London Reel Academy. So I worked with him for 3 years, learned everything I could about creating a platform, and then built up the Warrior Soul podcast. And today I've been able to talk to a lot of amazing guests. We've had on Robert Greene, Grant Cardone, thought leaders who bring new ideas to the veteran community that they might not have come across before. And of course, we're looking forward to having you on, Jonathan.
Awesome. Well, that's really cool. So when you were training online and really getting your business online, it was mostly personal training before you made that pivot?
It was mostly in-person training, right? So
okay.
At Metroflex, when I lost my shares, it wasn't like this lewd kind of business takeover. It was literally, I had built that business up from the ground, and I was living off of $300 to $500 a month for 3 years. So the beginning of any entrepreneurial journey is insane. So I was sleeping in the gym. And like I said, I made the really dumb mistake of getting married in the process, and she wasn't along for that ride, and I can't fault her for that. But ended up literally working myself into the ground and then had to figure something out. And I was pretty naive when it came to online business. So luckily, at that time I had people around me like Mike Rashid, which I don't know if you know, he's kind of a superstar in the fitness world, a big time fitness model, and CT Fletcher, who had, when he came into Metroflex Gym, had absolutely nothing and had built an empire based off of YouTube. So I was watching what these guys were doing. And then when I was down and out, Mike literally gave me a laptop and he said, listen, I know you're going through some hard times right now, but you could start getting this message out there. And it literally was a process of saying, okay, what do I have at my disposal right now? I don't have a lot of resources. I don't have money, but what I can do is get this message out there. And I worked from Starbucks. I showered at 24-Hour Fitness, and then Metroflex would still let me come in and do some filming there. So
incredible. I have so many questions for you, but
awesome.
that's why I'm interviewing you, right? I want to ask first about your time in the military, because I fundamentally believe, I actually had a friend and mentor in my last business. This is like 15 years ago. And he swore by hiring people from the military. And he believed that people in the military don't get enough credit for the real world, high pressure, often skills that they have that apply to life. I think a lot of times, especially in the United States, I think where I live in Israel, people are better about this. And you can actually skip your way to the top in a company, not based on what you studied in college, but what you did in the military. But in the US, I think people say, okay, you went to the military for a couple of years and you rolled around on the ground and shot guns, but it's not that. And there's so much life skills, people skills, self-management skills. So I want to take you back before the journey that you had after you served and ask you, like, what are the skills that you learned there when you were deployed, before you were deployed, that you're using today to create success, results, happiness in your own life?
That is a fantastic question. And, one of the things I tell guys, because I was an infantryman, and a lot of guys I deal with who have basically served in the combat arms, they think they're coming into the civilian world with no skills. And it's really, I think, the veteran who holds himself back or herself back in thinking that they don't have any transitionable skills when going into the civilian workforce. And the thing is this, it's all about dealing with human beings. And when you are in the military, you are going to work with a diverse array of personalities. And a lot of people outside of the military think that it's okay, you give an order and people are going to do it. But it's not like that. You're literally dealing with minds who have the tendency to procrastinate, who have the tendency to slack off. And so what you have to figure out in the military is how to motivate people, how to motivate human beings. And that's the primary skill you're going to get from being in the military. And if you've gotten through 4 years successfully, then you have those skills, and they are so transitionable to the civilian workforce. The biggest thing that has helped me in my career is understanding human beings. As a trainer, the thing is this: I could give you the most perfect plan in the world. That's a nutrition plan that's set for your blood type. I can give you every micronutrient and macronutrient that's supposed to transform your body. I can tell you every single rep, every single set that you're supposed to do. But here's the thing: if you're not going to be able to implement it in your life, then that does not matter. And so the biggest thing I'm focused on as a trainer is not necessarily telling people what to do. It's telling people how to introduce it in their lives in a way that's going to be sustainable, and keeping them motivated to continue that process beyond the time that they're working on getting to that specific goal.
I love that. I love that. Now, I think people, they see movies and they think that in the military, it's just someone shouts at you and you do stuff. But as I understand it, the military has really changed. And it really is about self-mastery, about building people up. I don't know if the military was ever that way, by the way. It might just be Hollywood. But that really it is exactly like you said about these self-mastery skills of picking yourself up and really imbuing these young people with transformational skills. So I'd love to hear more about that. Like, what are the mindset tools that are being taught to people who are defending our country, and how can the rest of us learn these, or can we?
Well, here's the biggest thing that people, I think, need to understand is that the United States military is the preeminent military force on the planet for a reason. And that's not because people follow orders, it's because of individual initiative. So if you go and you read a book, there's a fantastic book. It's called With the Old Breed by Eugene Sledge. And they did a TV series called The Pacific. And if you ever watch that, you have to look at what those guys were doing during World War II. I mean, literally getting off of a boat, stepping into a wall of lead, and then storming beaches. In a process like that, you're not going to have centralized command and control. Meaning you're not just going to be able to shout to somebody and say, hey, go do this or go do that. What has to happen in the military is the private, the PFC, the corporal, the sergeant, they have to take charge on the ground. And that corporal or sergeant, that non-commissioned officer, as we call them in the military, they're really the people who are there to motivate their privates, their PFCs to go and to take individual initiatives. So one of the things that I was taught in the Marine Corps from very early on was that everybody needed to understand the commander's intent. Right? Now, what's the commander's intent? That is what the commander wants to get accomplished, the end game. And by any means necessary, that's what needs to get done. And so one of the things you'll find in an organization like the Marine Corps is that everybody from the lowest private all the way up needs to understand what that intent is. And that is what the military runs on. That's what our military runs on. And if you don't have that decentralized command and control, and you don't have that initiative amongst your lowest paid workers, your lowest people on the totem pole, then your organization is not going to move forward.
Wow. Super interesting to me, because that's a lesson. And I personally believe like running a business is very similar to running a family. When I met my wife, I said these things to her and I was like, well, we could do it this way and we could come up with this kind of tool and create this agenda. And she didn't like it, but now our family runs like a well-oiled machine. Right. And that lesson is something that exactly in that way is powerful, not just if you're an entrepreneur, but also in your personal life. Like, I love how you started out, it is all about managing, communicating with, and collaborating with humans.
Absolutely. And the thing is, because they're humans, they need to know why. Why are they doing this in the first place? And it goes back to what I do as a trainer, because as a one-on-one coach, it's easy to fall into that trap of thinking, oh, I don't lead anybody, but I'm leading people every single day. I'm leading people toward a better version of themselves and leading them toward the version of themselves that they want to be. And so when I'm creating a plan for somebody, I need them to know why they're doing it. Why are you putting this piece of nutrition in your body? Why are you doing this exercise? Why is that important to you? And once they understand that, I find that clients are able to manage themselves so much better. It can't be about their dependence on me as their trainer. It has to be about them building up self-reliance. It's easy to be into fitness. It's easy to take care of yourself. But when the proverbial stuff hits the fan, that's what I'm worried about. I want them to be able to do this plan even under the worst conditions, when they're stressed, when the family life is a little bit more stressful, when they're pressed for time. I want them to be able to take care of themselves.
Wow. Now, I know this is a big topic that you work with clients a lot on, but how can people begin to implement that? Like, what are some resources? Or, because this is something I struggle with as well. I think we all struggle. I think everyone listening to this podcast wants to do more of what they say they want to do and not what they shouldn't be doing, right? And exactly when the stress hits the fan, when you're under deadline, you want to be that person who still wakes up at 5:30 in the morning, gets that exercise that they know their body needs, and then goes into the office and handles it like a boss. So how can we start to learn that mindset?
Well, the biggest thing I would say is it goes back to understanding how we're setting goals, right? And the thing I see that I think the biggest injustice that the fitness industry has done is they've centered a lot of goals around vanity or around ego, right? So when a person normally starts, I'll get somebody who comes to me and says, okay, I want to lose this amount of weight, or I want to squat this much, or I want to look like this. And the thing is this, that goal, it might be specific, it might have the SMART standards, but here's the thing. If that goal does not speak to a larger meaning in your life, then when the stuff hits the fan, you're going to drop it, right? And so what I'm constantly trying to get my clients to do is to see where this plays off in their lives, because I'm a believer that at the end of the day, fitness is about the freedom to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And fitness shouldn't just make you look better. It shouldn't just make you perform better. It should make you a better businessman. It should make you a better father, a better husband, better boyfriend, better everything you do. And so what I'm constantly trying to do with my clients is not the knowledge part is the easy thing. In this day and age, we've got Google, we've got YouTube. You can learn anything in seconds, right? Or you can at least find the answer to anything in seconds. But what I'm constantly trying to get my clients to do is remind them of why this is important. How is this going to add up to your vision in your life? And how is this going to make you better at all the things that are really important to you? And you have to have a meaning that's so important to you that no matter what, you're going to do it.
Wow. I think that's so right. And it really is about setting these big goals and this why, and I love what you said about the vanity metric, right? Like 6-pack abs are pretty easy to give up on. Like when that donut comes your way, it's pretty easy to go, I don't need the 6-pack abs. But something as big as like, my grandfather passed away from diabetes when I was young, and I'm not going to do that to my grandkids or my kids. That's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to justify that donut, huh?
Right. And here's the other thing. I mean, we're constantly managing the tension between who we are and who we want to become. And that's a thing that people need to realize is that, you might want to accomplish these amazing things, but if your peer group right now is not optimized for that, you've got to figure out some things that are going to motivate you to take those painful decisions, to make those painful decisions that are going to uplift you. And so, it doesn't just have to do with fitness. If you want to write a book, for example, you've got to manage the tension between the pressure to sit down and watch Netflix for 3 hours versus sitting down and actually writing that book, right? Yep. And so you need a deeper meaning that's going to allow you to get away from that pleasure and go toward the pain so that you can create that thing that you wanted to create in your life.
All right, let's take a quick pause and thank this episode's sponsor, BlueBlox Blue Light Blocking Glasses, the only blue light blocking company in the world that create evidence-backed lenses for filtering blue and green light. Their Australian lab-built lens technology is fitted into the most fashionable frames, and they can even make prescription and reading glasses in their optics lab. So whether you want to wear their Sleep Plus glasses that block 100% of blue and green light, their Summer Glow Mood Booster glasses, or even blue light computer glasses that don't have a yellow tint, BlueBlox has you covered. Now, I like to wear the Sleep Plus glasses 2 to 3 hours before bed, and they really, really help your sleep. I also like to wear the daytime ones for reducing digital eye strain, headaches, and lowering stress. Now, BlueBlox has free and fast worldwide shipping, and if you use code SUPERHUMAN at checkout, you can get 15% off any pair that you want. Just go to BlueBlox.com, that's BlueBlox.com, and enter code SUPERHUMAN to save 15%. All right, let's get back to the episode. Now, I want to ask, because you've done a lot of work now, and as you said, you've become really a resource and a beacon of light to veterans, but I think also to thousands and thousands of people all over the world. So I want to ask around, kind of your methodology, your shtick for self-improvement. And I'm intentionally asking a very wide question here because you, like me, get exposed to so much stuff through your podcast. I always want to know from other podcasters, like, what's the stuff that is stuck with you? What are the things that you've learned throughout your journey and years of doing this, working with clients, interviewing podcasters, that you've implemented in your own life and then gone on to teach others and implement for them?
Well, number one, the mindset is this. I have to constantly remind myself that I know absolutely nothing. All right. And the joy of being a podcaster is that, like yourself, I get to sit down with some amazing people who have accomplished so many things. And every week I'm learning something new. And so the first thing is humility, understanding that I constantly need to go into things with an open mind and constantly need to question the truths that are put in front of me. As far from a self-improvement aspect, what I would say is this. The biggest thing that has helped me as far as trying to bring new ideas to the podcast, trying to bring new ideas to my community, is reading really widely. I read everything from the ancient Greeks up to modern self-help. I read game theoretic journals. I'm constantly looking for things that I can bring in, new ideas that I can put out there, and constantly searching for people, honestly, who I consider myself like a collector of people who can bring new ideas to this community. And then the other aspect of it is understanding my audience. Because one of the things that I got from working with London Real for a long time, which is I think a very open community to self-help, is that there's a lot of people out there who latch onto self-help very easily, but most of those people aren't necessarily in the veteran community. And so when I'm approaching the veteran community, I have to bring it to them in a way that really shows them why this stuff is important. Because if I'm just going to say, if I'm going to approach a veteran and say, hey, you need to meditate, right? A lot of times they're going to be like, well, I don't want to sit there for 10 minutes doing nothing. Like, why the hell am I doing that? So what I have to start to break down for them is to start to understand why it's important. Why is it important to understand your brain? Why is it important to understand those thoughts? Why is it important to understand how some of your thoughts might be limiting you right now? And so it's constantly that process of kind of showing them why they need this stuff.
Yeah. So important. So important. So tell me a bit about your superhuman workflow, if you will. Like, what are the things? I mean, I know you ran a gym, right? You have worked with bodybuilders. You've also worked with athletes on mindset. So like, what are the things you are doing for yourself? Whether that be, I mean, you mentioned meditation, so that's a good starting point. Nutrition wise, training wise, what are the things you're doing to feel superhuman every single day?
Few things. Number one, morning routine. It's extremely important to me. I work best in the morning, and I have to have a period of time to myself in the morning that is just going to be my time to create. And so I'm up at 0400 a.m. And prior to that, I'm making sure that I get 8 hours of sleep. I'm very, very religious about that.
Awesome.
And so I'm up at 04. First thing I do is I meditate. I do some prayer. I set my intention for the day, and then I go into gratitude. Now, with my gratitude journaling, gratitude is huge right now in self-help. One of the things I found that I have to do with gratitude is not necessarily just find good things to be grateful for. What I try to find is a challenge or something that's kind of a thorn in my side to be grateful for. And to give you an example of this, I suffer from autoimmunity, ulcerative colitis. And so one of the things that I've been recently very grateful for is the fact that I have ulcerative colitis in the first place, because it's led me down this path of greater empathy and greater understanding of the human body. Because if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have been driven to know as much as I do about digestion and about inflammation and things like that. So once I get through that morning routine, I sit down and I read. And like I said before, it's usually a very wide reading of different things. So I'll have 2 or 3 different books that I'm going through at a time, and I like to keep them at different time periods. So right now I'm reading Xenophon's Anabasis, ancient story about Greek philosopher who went off on an expedition to Babylon, and then they got stranded there. So it's a fantastic story about leadership. And I'm reading Titan about Rockefeller, another great story about an individual who just had such will. And so I'll do that reading for a while, and then I'll spend about 45 minutes just writing, open-brained writing. And then from there, I'll get into my routine for the day. What I've found is that exercise in the morning is not my thing. And I know a lot of people like to do it first thing in the morning, but I find my central nervous system doesn't get fired up enough for me to really get enough energy that I need from it. I tend to work up until about 11 a.m. I'll go train. I will do some metabolic conditioning, some weights, and then I'll come back. I'll feel energized. I'll take a cold shower, and then I will jump into my afternoon work. And then from there, about 5 p.m., I'm starting to wind down. And so then I'll pull out the journal. I'll write down my thoughts for the day, think about what I did well, what I didn't do well. And then I'm either off to jujitsu or I'm cooking dinner for the night because I'm the chef of the house.
Very cool.
From a nutrition perspective, I find for me, and this is very specific to me, I try to keep myself in a low insulin state in the morning. So
nice.
Generally I'm fasting earlier in the day because if I have something in my system and my insulin spikes, then I find my energy starts to dip. The other thing is with coffee consumption. I do consume coffee, but I don't consume it early in the morning. I wait about 2 hours to allow cortisol to do its job in my body, which is to wake me up. And then I will take my first coffee in, and then I will that gives me a chance to have that caffeine give me a little bit more of a high. So that tends to last me through my workout and through the early afternoon.
Smart. I really like that. Really, really good. I will say though, I also was not a morning person, and then Ben Hardy happened to me, and we did a challenge for my mastermind. I mean, I'm talking like 15 years of nope, just not a workout person in the morning, and then he convinced me that. I mean, you mentioned that like it may actually have to do with your biology, which I totally respect. There are people who are larks or night owls, but he convinced me that this was like something that I could change through signaling, and got me to work out in the morning for a month. And now I'm a morning workout person after like 20 years, which has just been a blessing for me personally. But I totally respect the like, you know what your body's doing, you know?
Well, I think I think that's awesome. And when I'm working with clients, the big thing is this. What I try to keep away from is telling a client, you have to work out at this time. All right. Because what that's going to do is it's going to create a friction point for this person that says, okay, if I can't get to the gym at this time, then it's a waste. Right.
Right.
For myself, I was a morning person as far as workouts go. What I found was that the trade-off for me is that I need that creative time, that relaxing time in the morning to be my best self. And so for me, it's more like I have all this creative energy in the morning. I want to put it into that rather than jumping in the gym at that time.
I dig that. Yeah, I dig that. And a lot of people swear by that as well. Like, that kind of your limiting thinking inside the box, if you will, to use a cliche, doesn't start until like the late morning, early afternoon. So if you can sneak in writing before, you tend to be kind of more creative.
Exactly.
Very cool. I do want to ask, Chris, how has what you've taught, someone asked me this on a podcast and I thought it was just the best question and I stole the question, but how has what you've taught and the way you teach it changed since you started?
Oh man, it's changed significantly because you got to remember I was in the hardcore bodybuilding community, like hardcore, dealing with guys who were like 250 pounds of pure muscle, trying to push them every single chance I got. I used to pride myself. I would have these massive guys crying in the gym, right? And there was a kind of a sadistic element to it. And, I think what's happened is that over my years, I've gained a lot more empathy for people who are in this process of trying to transform themselves. And so the biggest thing I would say is that what's changed about me is that I'm so much less dogmatic the more that I've learned. Understanding that I have to carry a Swiss Army knife around with me, and that there's going to be a different tool for each situation. And so I'm much more interested now in getting that person who has tried to succeed in fitness, to and maybe failed a few times, to find their way, rather than taking that bodybuilder or that athlete who's trying to step onto, the Olympia stage someday and trying to do something with that. I'm much more interested in helping people to transform their lives and to bring fitness into their lives in a way that's gonna allow them to live their best lives.
I love that. And I've had the same experience with teaching memory as well. And a lot of the stuff that I teach, that it's like, you kind of start out, my buddy Rob Wolf, starts out with the paleo book and all these hard and fast rules. And then you get out there and you experience things and you're like, okay, there's more variety. There's more color than I realized. Than like, it's this continuum, it's this spectrum. And you need to be adaptable. I loved your metaphor, by the way. Like, I need to be a Swiss Army knife, not a chef knife when I work with my clients. I think that's so smart.
Exactly.
So smart. So I know we're coming up on time here, Chris. I do want to ask, what are some of the books that have most impacted you in your life? You said you're an avid reader. I also am, so I'm always trying to get recommendations for books.
Well, new book that came out this past year, I have to say, Call Sign Chaos by General Jim Mattis and Bing West is one of the best books on leadership I've ever read.
Wow.
It literally goes through his career. I mean, he's the preeminent warrior of our time, and it goes from the very beginnings of his career all the way up through when he was heading up CENTCOM, and just goes through all the obstacles, all the different difficulties that he got through. And I absolutely love that book. I have to say that I'm heavily influenced by Robert Greene. I had the chance to bring him onto the podcast. I just love the way he breaks down concepts and the way he focuses in on the human being. Right?
Yeah,
that's essentially what he's doing, and you get so much from any one of his books. And what I like about his books is that, a lot of books this day and age, you can read the introduction, you can know exactly everything that's going on. Every chapter, every word of his books means something, and you can take something away from that. And of course, I also like a lot of the old stuff too. So I'm a big fan of Montaigne right now. I'm going through his essays, and I try to read one each day. And I just find reading a thinker like that, like him, or maybe a Marcus Aurelius or an Epictetus, and just reading a little bit of that every day can give you a real conception of the way time is, and how, in the grand scheme of things, we're so small, right? But ideas, they last for such a long time. So, really, really like that, the old stuff too.
I love that. And a lot of those are new to me. So I'm really glad that I asked the question. Final question that I always ask, Chris, before I let people go, is if there's just one message that you hope people take away from this episode and carry with them for the rest of their lives, what would you hope for that to be?
Here's the biggest thing I really want to say is that as far as you as a person, you have to realize that you're worth it. When I grew up, like I said, I grew up without a father. And I carried around the story with me that, my father was an alcoholic who had left my family at a very young age. And throughout my time, I always had this idea that I was somehow less worthy than everybody else, that all these good things in the world were for everybody else, but not for me. And so that led to an idea that I shouldn't invest in myself. I shouldn't even try. But as I got older, I found that the more I actually put a better face on for the world, the more I actually put effort into what I was doing, people would come around and people would be more attracted to that. And so the biggest thing I would say is you need to sit down every day, think about the thoughts that are coming up in your brain that are limiting you, and you need to think about why you're thinking them. Right. And just as an add-on to that, one of the things I discovered about my father, from, and this just happened this past year, was that that whole story was actually not true. I through 23andMe, I actually found out that I was a artificial insemination baby.
Wow.
And so all those negative beliefs that I had about my origin story and everything like that, they were actually a figment of my imagination. And a lot of the stuff that's limiting us is stuff that we come up with. It's walls that we build up in our own brain. So you have to take the time to examine yourself. And with any goal that you're going to go for, you need to understand what's going to motivate you. And you need to understand how you're going to be able to bring meaning to that goal. Otherwise, it doesn't matter if it's a SMART goal, if it's laid out, if you've planned it perfectly, then you're going to give it up.
Wow. Really, really fantastic. Wise words. Mr. Chris Albert, I really appreciate you coming on the show. This was a total blast, and I look forward to connecting again when I come on your show.
Dude, I'm looking forward to bringing you on and talking to you about all the great stuff you've got going on over here at the Superhuman Academy.
Awesome, my friend. Well, let's talk soon.
All right, Jonathan. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit superhuman.blog. While you're at it, please take a moment to share this episode with a friend and leave us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week.